morning, everybody. Welcome to Life Beyond Sunday, Season 3. This season, we are going to be talking all things leadership, organization, and so I'm actually really excited about that.
Yeah.
And we're with TJ and Shayla. Welcome back, guys. We haven't done this in a while, so
I know.
I'm looking forward to it. Excited, TJ? Yes?
Always.
This is one of my favorite topics. So.
This is Shay. I told Shayla she could just talk this entire time because she is a leadership guru expert.
Exactly. You know what? We had CLA in the first semester, and I'm like, we're just about to give everybody all the content for free.
It's true.
Portions of it, maybe. Portions of it.
But actually, I was going to ask about that because this is a topic that both of you, I mean, especially you, but both of you are passionate about, I think. And when we talked a couple episodes ago, one of the things we said was when we were talking about the legacy, and we were saying where is the church going?
Yeah.
And we talked about the vision for the church. And one of the things we talked about was what's the biggest challenge? And I thought it was going to be money, and you guys said no, it's actually leaders.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was surprised at that answer. And so I guess to start, is that one of the reasons you guys are so passionate about leadership, or what? Because I know that that's a big part of Coastal is like growing leadership. So why do you think that that's something that moves you so much?
Go ahead.
I think part of it is in order to grow something, you've got to be a leader yourself.
Yeah.
So learning to lead myself and be a great leader of me begins first. And so in order to do that, you have to study leadership. Like, what is that going to mean for me? And then what is it going to mean for me leading other people? And now it's come to a season where it's like, hey, how do I help develop other people so that they can lead other people as well? And so I think that's been the process of.
We had a little backstage.
We have a lot of backstage episode there of just the leadership journey of, it starting with you or with me and just, hey, I need to be a leader. I think Maxwell, his first really famous book was Developing the Leader Within You. And I think that's where everybody has to start is how are you going to be the leader that you want everybody else to be? And then from there, how do you implement those things to lead other people really, really well? And then how do you help other people become really, really great leaders? And Shayla's a great leader. So.
Well, so are you. Why are you guys looking at me? Is there a question?
No, you agree with his answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, let's start off by defining what is a leader? What is a leader? Or what is leadership?
I mean, Maxwell would tell us leadership is influence.
Right.
Yep.
And I think that's a great definition of it. It's utilizing your influence to impact other people.
A lot of people, I think, say they're leaders, but when somebody's like, oh, yeah, I'm a leader, I'm like, but is anyone following you? you know? So I think it's like, are you influencing people? Are they listening to you? Are they following you? Are you able to raise people up? I think we all have the ability to lead. Like a lot of people think that they're not leaders, but they are. They influence their family. They influence their friends. They influence the people at their work. It's just, are we being intentional about having that mindset and then going, okay, like I want to be mindful of this, that I'm in these places of influence. So how am I using my influence to make a difference?
Yeah. It's interesting that you said it that way because, like, if you're somebody who you're like, I'm not in an organization and I'm a stay-at-home mom or something.
You're a leader.
Don't tune off because you're leading, you're raising kids, you're leading.
One of the most important leaders.
Exactly. So every one of us, that's why I asked, and I thought that was a perfect definition. Leadership is influence, and hopefully we all have influence on at least one other person in our life. If we don't, then that's a problem.
I love for the stay-at-home mom, or stay-at-home dad, or the person that thinks, well, I'm just a parent. Andy Stanley said this years ago. Your greatest contribution to our world may not be something you do, but someone you raise.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was a great line. So like, be present where you are and utilize the opportunity you do have to really influence, impact, create, and develop character and integrity and all the things that are necessary for your children to be thriving adults that influence people around them.
Yeah. And so today we're going to talk about habits.
Yeah.
And very particular habits about how, like, what are 2 to 3 habits or 4 that you find that are essential to become like a good, healthy leader. And I think, I mean, I'm going to let you guys start. I think, putting yourself before God is probably going to be the first one that you guys are going to say, but like
Putting God before yourself.
did I say put yourself before God?
Yeah, that's absolutely the first one, Kelly.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I think that might have been put yourself. Yeah, never mind. I'm not going to try and justify it. I was going to try and fix it. I'm just going to go with it.
yeah. So we're going to take that out of the equation in this conversation.
Yes, in this conversation, because I think, if anybody's listened before to what you guys say, I mean, it's obvious that your first habit, is every morning you are waking up, you are having your time with the Lord, setting yourself before the Lord, making sure that you are spending time.
Yeah, but I
in His
actually
Word.
think that that's the thing that people lack the most. I think a lot of times that is where the character development happens. Mm-hmm. And I think if we just take that as a given, I don't think a lot of people actually do that. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I think it's the primary, most important thing that you can do is prioritize that time with God, whether it's 5 minutes in the morning or 10 minutes, about creating that rhythm and that routine that sets your heart, your mind, your, all of those kinds of things. And I actually think people neglect that.
And I think one of the reasons that's important is because you can't have authority if you're not under authority.
Yep.
And if you're not under the greatest authority there is, which is the Word of God and God Himself, then you're going to be lacking the authority to lead other people, because you're not going to be doing it from a place of servanthood, a place of humility, a place of I'm putting others before myself. And I think that only comes from you developing your relationship with God.
Well, if you start looking up statistics, the majority of Christians, they don't read their Bible. They don't prioritize time with God. I recently did a message like a while back that gave statistics on those things. And I mean, I think it was somewhere around 70 or 80% that the only Bible that they ever read is when somebody reads it to them on a Sunday morning. Yeah. And so if that's 80% of people, that's probably 80% of leaders too, so.
Yeah.
I think I actually,
we can go on to other habits, but I don't want to be like, oh, that's a given, because it's really not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we understand it's essential, but not everybody has that habit.
Correct.
And if you don't implement that, anything else we talk about is
you're building on a faulty foundation.
Well, not only that, but the greatest leader that ever lived that is still impacting culture today is Jesus Christ.
So we can learn a lot.
The reality is what are the two major holidays that basically everybody celebrates? Christmas and Easter. What do they have to do? The birth of Christ and the death of Christ. You look at the culture of our world, like Jesus, like most of the laws that were written came out of things that Jesus said. Like, so the reality is Jesus is the greatest example of leadership, because he's still impacting the world today in a profound way, whether we recognize it, realize it, acknowledge it. The reality is he's still influencing us. And so if he had that much influence, why wouldn't we want to learn his will and his way and his options and how he led other people and the habits that he formed and the things that he did in his life? And I mean, if you look at the life of Jesus, what you're going to see is he was constantly getting away by himself to spend time with the Father.
Yeah.
And so if that was a priority of a habit,
And he got up early.
Yeah,
It always says it was in the morning.
or he would stay up all night,
True.
So if that was a major priority for him in order for him to have the authority and the impact he had, why would that not be something we would model as well?
Yeah.
Okay,
agreed.
we got the given out of the way.
Yeah.
So.
And I think you just to follow up on one thing, you said something that I'm like, this is important. It can be in the beginning, if you're trying to develop the habit. It can be 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like this, because I think I was talking about this in our last Freedom group. We were talking about prayer, and it was like, I said, listen, it's a muscle.
Yeah.
That you develop and that you grow.
100%.
So it's not something that you like, you start your life with God and you're like, man, I could pray for an hours on end. No, most of the time it's going to feel like you're babbling to nothing for a minute, and then that minute turns into 5 minutes, then that turns into 10 minutes, and then so so I think it's important. You said it could be 5 minutes. So as long as you're taking that time and trying to grow that habit.
Most of the ways that we develop, I think, as a leader, and the disciplines and the habits we create are actually really difficult. Because in order to lead, there are sacrifices you make and disciplines that you have in your life, because people are looking at you, they're following you, and so it's not going to feel natural. It's not going to be easy to develop habits, disciplines, rhythms in your life. It's a sacrifice.
If you're going to have major influence.
Correct. Correct.
You know, you don't get major influence without major sacrifice.
Yeah.
And
the things that
discipline.
you're looking at in people's lives and going, man, I want to model that after. I guarantee you talk to any of those people, they have habits, rhythms in their life that are not natural for them, but over time have become easier.
Yes.
You know?
So, okay. So now we're going to dive into a couple of other
Yeah.
not natural things that you know, if somebody's listening and you're like, if you could walk away with 3 habits, 4 habits that are essential. One of them is spending time with God. What's another?
Habits, traits, is that I want to make sure I know what you're asking.
Habits, like, I mean, you mentioned like waking up early.
Yeah, well,
you mentioned, you know,
I would say you have to prioritize your own health. Like I look at life and go, okay, if we're going to be effective in the things that God has for us, and we're going to effectively lead people and be leaders that produce change, then the only vehicle that God has given me to do that is this body, this temple. And if I don't care for that, then I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be worn out. I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be like, potentially my life is going to end earlier than it should. This is the only vehicle that I have to accomplish the things that God has placed inside of me. And if I don't prioritize that, then I'm going to be ineffective in a lot of ways.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think the trait that I think is most important is humility.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not, they say all the time, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less.
And it is a discipline.
It is a discipline.
It's a trait, but
So
it's also a
How
discipline.
do you practice, like, how do you create that aspect in your life? How do you how do you become humble if you're not?
I think it begins with serving other people.
Yes.
It goes, hey, I'm going to put other people above myself and I'm going to serve them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means, you know, I'm going to get walked on.
Yep.
And that's okay. I can be a bridge for other people. That's what I look at. Anytime I get walked on in life, I'm like, I'm being a bridge for somebody right now. And I know that we live in a day and an age where nobody wants to, my self-worth and my value. Listen, if Jesus could lay down his life, you can lay down yours. And I think humility, if you don't come from a place of humility, it's always self-serving then.
Yep.
And true leadership is not about serving yourself. It's about serving others and adding value to their life. And that begins with you dying to yourself.
And if you're a leader, you have influence and you're modeling that. And so people are going to reproduce basically who you are. And we don't want a bunch of people walking around that are serving themselves. Then it just becomes a horribly bad culture and, you know, place. So like we have to go first and we have to model that in our life. And I think so many people, like we've had this happen a lot, and it's kind of like red flags for ourselves as leaders. If somebody comes in to our church or whatever, and they're listing like this is what I've done, and this is what I've done, and this is what I've done, and here's what I'm going to come in here and do, and blah, blah, blah. I go, red flag, because you're here to serve yourself. You're not coming in and going, man, I know all the qualities that I have, but let me understand the heart of the house. Let me understand how I can best serve the body of Christ. And so for me, we're looking at, are you humble, or are you just walking in here going, I am God's gift, and here we go.
I've arrived and
you know?
recognize me.
Right.
And how do you balance humility with confidence? You know, like if I'm going to use this example because I can't sing. If I walk in here and I'm like, man, I know I have a voice, and I'm confident that that's a gift that God has given me. How do I balance that with humility practically? Like, how do you balance those two together? Can you be confident and humble at the same time?
I think you totally can. I think that a confident person that's humble is even more attractive to people than a lot of times it isn't confidence, it's arrogance. And there's a big difference between confidence and arrogance. Arrogance says, look at me. Confidence says, I know who I am and I'm secure in that. And if you're secure in who you are, you don't have to tell me you're awesome.
Right. That's
like
going to be
I'll
seen.
discover that. I'll see that in your life. The arrogant person has to tell everybody they're awesome.
Yeah.
Because really they're coming from a place of insecurity. In humility is a place, I think in humility, there is confidence. I know who I am. I'm secure in who I am, so therefore I can serve other people, and it doesn't devalue or diminish me. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think that if I'm humble, then I'm being devalued and diminished. No. Actually, it's in your strength that you're able to serve. Mm-hmm. And so I think when people realize that, it's really easy for me to go scrape floors of stickers. Like, it doesn't diminish me to do that. I'm in the lobby all the time. You'll if you were to walk in really early to an event, most of the time you'll see me in there with a scraper on my hands and knees, scraping floors. And you're like, why are you doing that? Because I'm not too big to get down on my hands and knees and serve the house in a way that a lot of people will never see.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any problem go and plunging a toilet that's backed up. Like, it's not beneath me. If that's what's best for the house, like, I'm still secure in who I am. I'm not diminished to like, oh, that's a janitor's role. No, that's a servant's role.
I think if you think about, your favorite bosses or people that you've been under, I can imagine that they are very humble and serving of you, of the organization, and probably some of your least favorite bosses or leaders have been people that have been arrogant or puffed up. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, what do I want to model differently? And let me find somebody that I can kind of learn those behaviors from, because really it's a discipline. Sometimes, like art, I think it's very easy to have a prideful nature if you're gifted and if you're all of those things, and you have to do things that combat that. And sometimes the service aspect does, like, I'm just going to go serve. I'm just going to go, and I think it makes a big difference.
I agree with that. And what is one other habit that you would say, like, if I think this is like another thing that is essential for like leadership. So we talked about health, about serving, which is a habit, which brings humility. Mm-hmm. And what's one other that
I would say courage. As a leader, you have to be willing to step out when everybody else is stepping back. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to take steps into places that other people can't see. That's leadership. Mm-hmm. Leadership is you being able to see what nobody else can see at that moment. Mm-hmm. You're seeing further ahead. You're seeing where people need to go. And you're willing to take steps, because most people won't go to uncomfortable places, and a leader is always leading people there. Mm-hmm. But in order to go there, you have to go first. So you have to have the courage to step into those things and trust that, man, God is leading that, and that I'm going to lead people in a place that is going to make them healthier and better. And I think that takes a lot of courage, because nobody else can see in that moment. Nobody else understands in that moment, but you know that that's where you need to go.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree?
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is also like the courage piece to go there, but then it's the commitment to kind of stay there. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people that start stuff that don't finish. Like, oh, I started that, but then they're not consistent in it. And I think consistency is a huge thing. So yes, you have the courage to go there, but you have the consistency to stay and to stand firm and stand strong in the midst of, because in leadership, you're leading people to places they haven't gone. That's what a leader is. You're leading through things that are uncertain. You're leading through things that are difficult, because people need direction. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be consistent in those things so that they can see that and then model it for themselves too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about like making those decisions in another episode and how to bring people along. But how do you, if you're somebody that, like, I'm not a courageous person. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm like afraid of my own shadow. My poor kids are the same.
Which I completely disagree with you, but
no,
you're being so humble.
I am so humble. I'm practicing all of the, but I'm not, like, I don't describe myself as that type of person. Is there something that can be done, or is it just slowly but surely, like, okay, I'm going to step out in baby steps,
So I think here's what I say a lot, because courage requires you're doing something that's hard. You're doing something that doesn't feel natural. And I think as a leader, I say this a lot. It's choose your hard, like you're either choosing the hard of like staying the same and status quo, or you're choosing the hard of making the courageous decision and stepping out. So it's like, which kind of hard do you want to live in? Yeah. The pain of staying the same or the pain of changing.
Yeah.
And so it's really.
And I think the other part is I think God honors boldness and boldness honors God.
Yeah.
And I just look at almost every leadership story in the Bible, whether it's Moses leading the children of Israel out of Egypt, or Gideon, leading the 400, or it was David with Goliath. What did all those stories require? They required courage.
Yeah.
And it didn't mean they didn't have fear.
Yeah. It means they stepped out into the unknown
In spite of it.
and went first, and then everybody else followed.
Yep.
But in leadership, it always takes somebody going first. And if you're going to be a leader, you got to be willing to go first and look foolish.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the problem is most people are not willing to take a step because they're more concerned with what people think than what God thinks.
Yeah.
They're more concerned with staying in their comfort zone than they are with stretching themselves and growing. And I think in leadership, if you're going to continually be a leader that's growing, you've got to be constantly stretching yourself. You got to be constantly putting yourself in positions. Like we say it all, you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And if you don't want that, then you don't want leadership.
Yeah.
Because that's the reality of leadership, is you're constantly going, it's the rubber band. You're going to get stretched, and then you're going to come back, and then you're going to get stretched, you're going to come back, you're going to get stretched.
You even think about it, let's go back to what we were talking about at the very, very beginning. Like, as parents in our homes, we're leaders, regardless if we see ourselves as leaders or not. You have to have courage to make decisions for your kids or have conversations with your kids that go against the things that the world would say or whatever. That requires a courage and like just a dedication to go, no, this is who we are and this is what we're going to do. And so it starts even in those places. I was going to say simple places, but that is not a simple place,
Well, I think it starts in the small things.
Yeah.
And then it's
And then you
Correct.
as you strengthen the small things, it gets bigger.
Yeah.
But if you don't have courage in the small things, you're probably not going to have courage in the big things.
Yeah.
So like if you're not courageous enough to go like, hey, I'm going to get up this morning even though I hurt and I'm in pain from workout yesterday.
That was me.
And I'm going to go work out again today. Like that takes courage because you're sore and you're hurting and you just go, man, I'm just going to show. Like that's a step of courage every single day.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden it's transforming you. Now you're going to go run a marathon, or now you're going to go do an Ironman, or now whatever it may be.
I don't know if I would do maybe a half marathon. I did a half marathon once.
But I don't feel I need to do that at
It
all.
took me much longer than I would like to say on camera, but it was done. You know what I'm saying? So
I'm having courage to say no to that.
So just to backtrack, our traits are spending time with God, making sure that you're prioritizing your health, risk taking or being courageous to take risks, and serving so that you can stay humble.
Yeah. I think that's a start.
I mean, there's a lot more traits, but you said
We
3.
could talk this all day long.
Well, if we give them 15, they're going to be like, okay, we can't.
I can't do that. Start there.
Small goals, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys, we thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back next week to dive a little bit further into the topic. All right, thank you.